This is a ghostly night, isn't it? An air of eerie hanging around, owls hooting, and birds long gone. Look! It's a silhouette! Wait. Is my hair straight? So much for this. Hey bookworms, how are you doing? I hope you're doing alright because I'm not gonna do that. Did you hear that intro ever again? Today's video is kind of special and I know I haven't been posting videos for some time. Yep, I do. So in today's video I researched about Gothic fiction and I'm relatively new to this term about Gothic fiction or this Gothic fashion, Gothic book recommendations, and I have heard these quite a lot of times, but I have never bothered to research them or get to know their meaning. So I was really curious about this Gothic fiction, so I did a bit of a research and I found it very intriguing. And I also read a book, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, so that you fellow bookworms can get a grasp of what Gothic fiction really is. Gothic fiction theme is mainly based off of dark, like smoky, spooky and smoky, sinister kind of vibes. So that's why hence the background and everything and this little setup here. So Gothic fiction mainly focuses on these two themes of horror and death. There's also a bit of mystery, suspense and thriller hiding in the background. So some lists of Gothic fiction, some lists of books that are related to Gothic fiction are Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Frankenstein, some other works by Mary Shelley, and even Harry Potter, and the list goes on. So some examples of Gothic films are The Others, The Uninvited, and Harry Potter films, etc. So Gothic fiction, what really defines the genre of Gothic? Gothic fiction is invented by Horace Walpole, who is an English author, and he mainly focused on his books, his 1764 books, The Castle of Otranto, on dark themes of horror and death. Now we're not like really new to this theme. Many people at that time, in the Victorian times, they were really obsessed with medievalism, especially Britons. They thought that there was something that was beyond their eyes that they couldn't see, and all that kind of imagination, creating that spooky and chilling atmosphere. So that's really some creative imagination to imagine ghosts and witches and gargoyles and everything. I really love this genre, which is why I'm so indulged in books that are related to Gothic fiction and also movies. So especially Britons were commemorating their imaginations using false tournaments and even like false traditions and fake subcultures. And then the Gothic subculture came and everyone was like, oh my god, this is so amazing, and we can write loads and tons of books and tons of films and tons of ideas around this theme, which is when the paranormal stuff kind of popped up. So here are some key themes that are a must when it comes to Gothic fiction. First one is, obviously as I said before, mystery and suspense. Cultivating an air of suspense is really important in Gothic books and films, especially in books, because it's really hard to create that kind of atmosphere, especially in the olden times when they were really new to this kind of subculture and people didn't get their imaginations up. So mystery and suspense was usually related to murder and crimes. So usually there's this girl living on a castle that's alone, and then there's a murder going on, and then there's a crime, and there are detectives coming along. So that's the kind of stuff they had in the olden times, and soon it was developing brick by brick. When it comes to Gothic fiction, chilling atmosphere is really important. Especially castles were really rewarded as that kind of chilling atmosphere factor because of their structure. Especially they were grandiose, and there were mysterious rooms and chambers inside the castles, you know, the dungeons and the prisons, the great and historic tales that went through the castle. Castles are the best spots when it comes to architectural development and architectural involvement in these kinds of books. And as the story goes on, you can see that the words are creating kind of some emotional turmoil inside you, is kind of building up. So that is very important in Gothic fiction. It's really hard to create in words. So when it's in action, you can see kind of chairs moving along and the wind sweeping past the protagonist when it comes to movies and all. But it's really hard when it comes to words. So usage of mysterious and suspenseful words are really important when it comes to this category. They create an emotional distress that you just want to shut down the book and go run and grab a cup of water and then come back and continue the chapter. Gargoyles, witches, wizards, vampires, pixies, goblins, etc., etc. are not that important when it comes to these books, because very few books like the Dracula actually have supernatural beings in them, and other than that it's just a castle and just a protagonist and just a mystery. But the including of supernatural beings was really creative at that time, because you get to see that beyond yourself, that beyond what you're seeing around you, beyond the people that you're just experiencing day by day, there's also other creatures that are unknown to you, that are kind of mysterious. You really want to know what they are, you really want to see their habits and everything, and as you go through the journey you feel like you're the protagonist who's getting to know more about the mysterious world. Now this is a trope that I just hate, like plainly hate. Good versus evil. I have read that book, The School of Good versus Evil, and I have heard really good reviews about it, but this is a trope that I just hate. Like, why is it even a fight between good and the evil when it's just about the protagonist and what they're going through, experiencing all these paranormal kind of situations around them? And I don't see the point of good versus evil, really. I just hate that trope. But then it also plays a very necessary part in the books and in the films, generally in the Gothic fiction, so that when you're rooting to the good side, there's something about the evil side that also bothering you, and you go through the mysterious steps, and you go through and see what it's really like in the good side and the evil side. So that's kind of confusing. This is so creepy that I don't even want to speak about it, and that is the Macabre events. Macabre events, the term of Macabre means that events that are supposedly not supposed to happen, like events that are fighting alongside with good versus evil, and there are some supernatural beings and kind of spooky rituals to go along with. So it's kind of spooky. But other than that, Macabre events are really rare in occasions of books, and in films you can usually see them, but in books they are really kind of hard to describe to the reader, and the subplots and the journeys coming along with the events are kind of hard to explain, so we don't see them often. When I came across Gothic fiction, I also learned about Gothic fashion. I didn't even know that there was like a fashion for the subculture. Obviously there's a fashion for like every kind of subculture, but I didn't know it was specifically into this many types, and this was very elaborate. Of course I have seen some Halloween cosplays and things that are like the CyberGoth themed fashion, and I really love those. So the themes of Gothic fashion are divided into these different types: death rock, Gothic heart, Gothic Lolita, Aristocrat, traditional goth, and CyberGoth. So that's all about Gothic fiction. I hope you get like kind of a grasp about what really defines Gothic fiction, and let's move on about the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So the story starts off with Mr. Richard Utterson, and he is a lawyer, an English lawyer to be more elaborate, and his friend is this man called Dr. Enfield, who is also very businesslike. And one day when they're walking through the Sunday walk, I mean, please don't get me wrong, I'm not going to go in that fairy tale mode just because I'm talking about gothic fiction. So they're going in this kind of Sunday walk, and then Mr. Hyde spots a weird, uncanny looking door, and he asks, is anyone coming from here? Is there something like peculiar about the house, or is anyone living in the house? And Dr. Enfield tells him a very mysterious story about this appearance, that this incident kind of happening in the road. He tells that there is a short man called Mr. Hyde, and he was walking through the road while a little child was riding this side, and he just trampled it without any consent, and that was a very hellish scene to see. So while he's talking about that, Mr. Artisan says that the tale has reached all through the town, and he's kind of intrigued about who this person Mr. Hyde really is, and because he's a lawyer, he's very curious, and he wants to see what this case of this person called Mr. Hyde is, and why he is behaving and acting so peculiar. He also is meanwhile on the other side wondering about his friend, who is Dr. Jekyll, and he is a scientist. So we did not see him often in the story, and as he is going through his letters that were given to him by Dr. Jekyll, he's intrigued by his behavior, and he asks his long lost friend of his, Dr. Lanyon, and he has a meeting with him, kind of like a private chat, about what really happened to Dr. Jekyll and why he's behaving so strange, and he wants to uncover the truth behind it. So that's like the point of the whole story. His meeting, however, was very unsuccessful, and Dr. Lanyon confesses that he does not really know much about Dr. Jekyll as well. But he also tells that he has heard of his butler and his servant in his mansion, who is Poole, and wants to interview him further to see what is happening to Dr. Jekyll. And that's kind of half story done. So then when he's investigating Poole, he tells him to meet him tomorrow after some time, because he's not really feeling very well. Then meanwhile, there is this strange case, this crime that has happened on a nearby street. So there's this really famous person who has been found dead on this lane, and then there's a maid who has witnessed all this, and she's like, this was a very peculiar scene to see, and he was just shot by this short and cool and nonchalant person walking down the street, and the police are very intrigued about this description of this person walking down the street. And then when the news reaches Mr. Artisan's ear, he kind of has this suspicion that it might be Mr. Hyde, so he goes on further to investigate. Then, as some evidence suggests, he finds out that it indeed is Mr. Hyde, and he is kind of peculiar. Is there something that has got to do with Dr. Jekyll and as well as Mr. Hyde? Because the day he asked Poole about, the day he asked his butler about the interview with him and about Dr. Jekyll, the day that incident just popped out of nowhere, and just tying all those knots together and untangling them piece by piece is like very mysterious and suspenseful, and I really loved that part of the story. And then after some series of events, I'm not going to describe them to you or else it will be spoiler. So after some series of events and unfortunate happenings in the story, he finds out that it is finally Mr. Hyde who commits all that crime. And after he receives a set of letters that are uncanny from a mysterious source, he finds out that it's actually somehow connected to Dr. Jekyll. And then he kind of flabbergasted as to why Dr. Jekyll would write a letter after this many years, and after this many times that he has tried to interview and get some information from Poole, and he's denying him. Then after everything happens, after the investigation is over, he finds out that Dr. Jekyll is actually somehow disguised as Mr. Hyde. Now this is really cliche, but listen to me until the end. So Dr. Jekyll is a scientist, hence he has brewed this kind of potion which divides the good and the evil personality of the drinker, and Dr. Jekyll is the good personality and Mr. Hyde is a bad personality, and somehow they're connected together, and he has difficulty in staying in the good side, so he's somewhere locked up in his own house. And out of this goes on, Mr. Utterson reports all this to the police. Mr. Utterson reports this kind of events to the police, and the story is over. Now, I really enjoyed this particular story because it wasn't like other gothic books I have heard about, or at least read the synopsis and the basic information about it. So it kind of deals with a different topic other than this. It definitely has mysterious and spine-chilling events happening, and murder, crime, etc., as well. But it does not have supernatural beings or the chilling atmosphere. But when you go through the story, you kind of get this emotional distress, and you feel like there's actually a chilling atmosphere to it, and that's the town that the protagonist is living in. And after all these kind of events, I think I would have liked the book to be more elaborate on the events happening, not only on the death of that famous person, but also other uncanny and mysterious events that are like red herrings that just lead the protagonist off the hunt. So I would have really liked that. I haven't found that in any books yet, but this was totally a very good representation of gothic fiction. So that's it for the video. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe and support my channel. And also I would recommend you to go more on the gothic theme of gothic fiction if you haven't already, and there are some books that you can read as well. So stay happy, stay safe, keep reading.